Okay. Are we ready to begin? Call the Broken Arrow City Council special meeting to order. Roll call.
Pickle.
Here.
Green.
Here.
Ford.
Here.
Parks.
Here.
Wimpy.
Here. Please stand and join Councilor Pickle for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Stand, salute, pledge. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. All right, item 4 is presentations. 4A, presentation and discussion of the 2026 manual fees. Emily.
I think I'm actually going to kick it off. So Kenny Schwab, Assistant City Manager over Operations. The team that's presenting today will be Charlie Bright, Director of Engineering and Construction, and Emily Rowling, our Environmental Division Manager. So thank you first and foremost, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Councilors, Madam Chair, Mr. Vice Chair, Trustees, City Manager, General Manager. Covered you all.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So thank you for this work session. We're going to go over our manual of fees and our utility revenue. We'll focus more on the utility revenue, but I know that we have sent you the packet that we're going to go over to give you some time to digest it. We'll be here to answer any of the questions. At the end of the presentation, what we'll be looking for is just direction. There's nothing necessarily to adopt. What we plan on doing is bringing it back in August for adoption, either the first or the second meeting, but we're looking for direction from you. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Charlie Bright and let him start the presentation.
Good evening to everybody that Kenny said. Yeah, I'm Charlie Bright, Director of Engineering and Construction. As he said, we're going to talk about the manual fees today. Primarily, we're going to focus on the utility rates. I'd like to kind of go by like how we do what we do, why we do what we do. We really look at this on an annual basis. Obviously, it comes to the council that we talk to you all about any potential rate increases on an annual basis, but as staff, we're looking at an annual basis from a rate study perspective. And so what we do is today we hire an expert to help us, outside consultants, who we've been utilizing for many years now is Black & Veatch. We actually had our first contract for a rate study with Black & Veatch back in 2016. They're a world-renowned company, very good at what they do. They're one of the leaders in the country, the United States, for rate studies in particular. Very, very good. It's always as good as the project manager you have. The project manager we have on this is one of the best, I think, across the country in what they do. They lead communities from California all the way to the East Coast and this kind of stuff. The ultimate goal, well, I will take a step back and even say even before 2016, that was the first time we did a rate study. In particular, I understand from Broken Arrow, I wasn't here at the time. My understanding is it's the first time we did a rate study. But prior to that rate study with an outside consultant, we had Black & Veatch do what we call the cost of services analysis, with the ultimate goal of to start with a rate study and understand what you're charging your customers. You really have to understand what it is, what services you're providing and the cost of it. I think up to that point, you kind of just provided them, but you didn't have the data necessarily that supported how and why. And as you grow, you want to be more professional and understand what you're doing and why you're doing it. So we've utilized them since then. I believe the first rate study, I may have some of the dates somewhat off, but I believe the first rate study we adopted was back around 2017. It was a 5-year rate study. And then we kind of came up to that next window for a rate study in the 2022 range. We actually have not adopted the one since 2022. Really, it's because of the challenges that we kind of had coming out of 2022. As you guys could recall, obviously we went through COVID, and we were working on the rate study at that time. That put a lot of issues in there. Coming out of the COVID year, the council at the time chose not to increase rates because there was so much uncertainty at the time. And so that kind of threw a wrench in how we approach things. Soon after that, we ended up adding solid waste and recycling to our rate study model, which changed a lot. And then in particular, the years since then, we've just had record-breaking inflation, which due to that kind of window coming out of COVID. So we had a lot of challenges in that time. So we actually haven't adopted a full 5-year model since that point, but we've just been updating the rate study itself on a year-by-year basis to try to get what we need to be. You'll actually notice when you get to Bama tonight, on the agenda, we have a couple amendments with Black and Veatch to go ahead and do a full model rebuild of the rate study. So hopefully by next year, we update our data across the board and we can adopt a full 5-year model instead of going on kind of an annual basis, how we've been doing it the last couple of years. Sorry, kind of flipping the mouse. You can go to you already go to the next one. So as we already said, we're going to focus on utility rates tonight, but this is just to show that really the discussion's about a whole manual of fees, and it's also to show that increases aren't only on utilities. We have increases across the board because our costs increase across the board. So when you look at the other things we got going on, building permits, trade permits, miscellaneous, electrical contractors, plumbing contractors, our cemetery fees, our license, our registrations, across the board, we're going up 2 to 3% on just about everything just because of standard increases. Utilities are a little bit higher, but it's really just to show that this is more than just utilities. So the how and the why of what we do, what it comes down to at the end of the day is we look at the model in a sense of we try to take from director's point of view, leadership's point of view, city manager, we try to take an approach at what is our expenditures? What does it cost to run our system? And we try to be conservative. We try to be good stewards of the public money. We want to run it in a way that provides the services that our leadership and our citizens expect, but we want to be, good stewards of that money and not be too careless with the funds, be, fiscally conservative as we can. So we do that to find what our expenses are. And then it's as simple as that. To project how many customers we have and make the revenues match the expenditures. That's how the whole model works. It all starts with building what the total cost to run the system is, and then seeing what it takes to make the revenue match that. And that's how we got to the numbers that we've talked about, and we're talking about tonight. Is it just comes from what is the cost to run the system, and then what revenue is needed to get to that level. Going into a little bit more detail on each. Do you have the clicker? Or is this the two? Oh, I guess it's still, I see, it's split. Never mind. So going into the detail on each, we go into the revenue portion first. I'm gonna flip to it myself. So money coming in, money going out. The pie chart, money coming in. As you can see, we make a majority of the right side is kind of our revenues. The left side is a little bit different things, but you can see we make a majority of our revenue coming in just from the water. Why a lot of people call it that. Is this their water bill? That's how we funded it. We built the cost of all of our services into the water service. The goal coming out of this is to hopefully not do that anymore. That's where we're working to a more professional system, is we want the sanitary fee to represent the sanitary costs. Mm-hmm. We want the solid waste and recycling fee to represent the solid waste and recycling costs. So that way you can better independently track what your actual costs are in the future. We're not there yet. We still rely very heavily on water, but that's why you see water representing a majority of our revenue. Water taps makes up a pretty small amount. And then sanitary is catching up. Sanitary carries a much higher cost, I think, still today than what we show it coming in as revenue, but that's the next biggest portion. And then you get into our stormwater utility fee and our sanitation fees. I will say on the left side of that, you see 14% of that represents transfers in. That is coming from the sales tax portion of the city of Broken Arrow, but as we noted before, we don't necessarily get to keep that funding there. And then the biggest portion you see is note proceeds, which we've talked about in the past. That's actually our capital projects. That's not revenue coming in a given year. That is the loans that we take to maintain the system, the large capital projects. The new water tank out on 101st and Lynn Lane, the new southern loop of the water lines that we're connecting on the south side of town, all those large capital projects, that comes from our loan program that you see in that big category. So that's how we budget for it, but that's not new revenue coming in from customers or anything like that. Expenditures going out. So very similar to the other chart. We know where our money's coming in, where's our money going out. Again, the biggest piece of the pie is just what we talked about is the capital outlay. Just like the notes that we've shown coming in, The orange portion over here to the left, that's our money going out for our capital expenses. Again, it's the redoing of the water tank. It's when we go in and we update the neighborhoods of Melinda Park, Oak Tree, all that kind of stuff. Those are all $5, $6, $7 million projects. We pay for it in our capital money from the loans, and that's our biggest expenditure out, is paying for those projects that maintain our system. And then you can see our debt servicing costs for those projects and those notes, which represents about 9% of our budget now. Personnel, our people, represent 18%. Other services and charges, we're at 14%. And then where we talked about on the last slide, our transfers in, I believe being approximately 21 million. Let me make sure. Yeah, our transfers in being approximately 21 million for the city, but you see we actually transfer out 24 million in addition to that. And that makes up for, I believe, basically what we're bringing in, plus a few other things like the economic development money and a few other items going out with it. So we're actually pulling more money out of Bama than we're bringing back into it. So that gives us a little bit of an outline of what's coming in, what's going out. I'll let Emily kind of take over for a few minutes and talk about the actual utility bills and the increases.
Thanks, Charlie. Good evening. Yeah, so now we'll get into a little more detail on specifically utility bill and what we're looking at. So the first thing is to talk about what the charges are on a utility bill. So a lot of us, which I think has been mentioned before, tend to call it a water bill, but it actually includes a lot more than that. So on the bill we have water, wastewater or sewer, stormwater, solid waste and recycling, life ride, and the street lights. So then this chart, it has a lot of numbers on it, so we'll kind of walk through it. But it's showing just your average cost on a utility bill. So we use 7,300 gallons of water and 4,300 or 4,500 gallons of sewer. So this would represent kind of your average family of four usage in a month. So on the white column, it has the water and sewer, and then stormwater service, refuse, which is trash or solid waste and recycling, life ride, and the street light fee. And those are just kind of fixed costs on your bill. They don't depend on your usage that month or anything, so they stay the same month to month. So water and sewer are a little bit different, where we have the base rate charge, which is also called the meter charge, and that's just kind of the flat rate. That would be the same every month, and it is basically just to keep water operations going to your house regardless of what your usage is. And then the other number is your usage charge, which is based on how much water or sewer you're using. So then the gray column is what those rates are with the current like fiscal year 25 rates, what you would expect your bill to be. The jumping over the first blue column, the yellow column is with the proposed rates, and then the two blue ones kind of show the rate change and then the total change. So starting with the water, I'm like, I know it's a lot of numbers, just bear with me. Starting with the gray column on the water charge, the current bill would be for your usage, $6.54, and then for the base rate, $11.79. So with the fiscal year 26 proposed rates, that would change to $6.86 and $13.05. So a rate change of 32 cents on the usage rate and $1.26 on the base rate, which would take your FY20 bill on water, just the water portion, from $59.53 to $63.13, so a change of $3.60. So then doing the same on sewer, the current rate is $5.43, and for usage, the current base rate is $13.55. We're proposing to go to $6.46 for the usage charge and $16.65 for the base rate charge. So a change of $1.03 on the usage and $3.10 on the base rate. So a total of $7.74 for the sewer. Stormwater service is going from proposed to go from $10.22 to $10.72, so a change of 50 cents. The solid waste and recycling proposed going from $24.25 to $26.75, which is a change of $2.50. And then there's no change proposed for life ride or the street light fee. So that shows a total bill going from $140.94 to $155.27. So a change of about $14.33. So about 10% overall on the bill for a family of four. So then this is just kind of a high level, some of the reasons that contribute to the necessity for rate increases. So Charlie talked about the, revenue has to balance with the expenses. So some of the things that have contributed to this are increased costs just in all of our operations. So our tipping fees for solid waste and sewer sludge disposal have increased, asphalt cost increases, construction cost increases, chemical costs at both the water and wastewater plant increases, and electricity cost increases. We also have a vehicle replacement fund that's added into this. We have some additional personnel proposed for this year just to help as the city grows and to continue providing the service for the operations. Pay increases for personnel, so cost of living increases. And then, as Charlie kind of mentioned, in the past, we have traditionally had water help offset any deficit by the other utilities. So one of the goals of this study was to try to get sewer and solid waste and recycling and stormwater all to kind of hold their own with that and be able to stand independently, so water isn't covering everything. So then this gets into some of the more specific. I asked the different directors for departments to give me some specific cost increases so we can see what that's looked like over the last few years. So in solid waste and recycling, we've seen an increase of approximately $1.2 million per year for tipping fees, which have increased 97%. Recycling fees have increased 79%. The automatic side loading trucks have increased 51% per truck. And the MET fees, which is the recycling drop off, 25%. So our utilities, which is this is specifically the water and sewer. Lab services have increased 61%. Power, which is PSO and electric, which mostly is at the plants, lift stations, booster pump stations. Cost has increased 20%. Chemical services, 19%. Our stormwater department has seen concrete go up just 8% in the last year. The aggregate, which is rock, go up 10%. Backfill and sand, 53%. And topsoil has increased 41%. And then on top of all of those very specific costs, you just have general kind of administrative and operational costs that have increased as well. So increase to employees and benefits. We have to stay competitive in the current job market to make sure that we continue to get good employees and get employees to continue to run the operations in the system at the plants. Additional employees to maintain in a growing city. We've seen a lot of construction cost increase in the last 3 to 5 years, and that's only going to continue to increase. And then equipment costs increase to do the construction that we do in-house. So then this slide, the chart on the right is kind of just summarizing what we looked at a couple of slides ago, just showing that change in the utility bill. Cost from $140.94 to $155.27 with the proposed rate, so a cost of $14.33 or a change of $14.33, so the 10%. We're going to look at some comparisons with other cities. The stuff on the left just kind of shows there are some of the cities that we're going to look at that use a tiered rate structure that, like, as you use more water, your price per 1,000 gallons increases. Not all the cities have a stormwater fee, but several of them do. And then some of the other ones have the life ride fees, but we're going to specifically just look at water and sewer to make it just a even cost comparison. So this first one is looking at like similar size cities in Oklahoma. So a few things to point out on this. So this shows us coming in at $108.85. You see Edmond is the highest one on here at $122.76. So some of the reasons that they look like that, they've recently constructed a new water and sewer plants in the last decade. They used to purchase water from Oklahoma City, but the cost of the master meter has significantly increased to the point that it forced them off of Oklahoma City. And so that is one of the reasons that their water has kind of jumped up in cost to cover those costs of them now making their own water. And then they do, though, generate a lot of sales tax and have their own electric utility, which kind of helps them offset some costs too. City of Tulsa Theirs comes in at $101.41 with this, which is pretty close to what ours is, but they also supply a lot of drinking water to a lot of surrounding cities. Owasso, Jinx, Bixby, Glenpool, Sperry, Catoosa. They supplement water to us and to Rural Water 4, which all of that helps offset their operational costs because they get to create revenue with that. City of Norman, their bill shows at $58.31, which is pretty low compared to the other cities around, but they are a charter city, and one of the things in their charter, the way it's set up, is that any utility increases come from a vote of the people, and so it has to be approved by a vote of the people. They don't have a stormwater fee at all, and so that has been, they've tried to pass that 3 or 4 times, and it's never passed just because the citizens won't vote for it. But because Norman has a university there, that is a pretty large university, that helps
Yes.
offset a lot of their costs with sales tax. So
Yeah.
they have that to help out. And then City of Oklahoma City, similar to Tulsa, they supply water to several other communities. They're the largest sales tax generator in the state. And then they actually have a combined groundwater and surface water system, which the groundwater is generally a little bit easier to treat than surface water can be. So the next group that we'll look at are how we compare with other local suppliers in our area. So on this one, we look a little bit higher than some of the other ones, but kind of walking through again what the other cities have. City of Bixby purchases treated water from Tulsa and therefore has no cost to operate and maintain a water plant. And until recently, they didn't have a sewer plant, and just recently got that. So all of their costs on the water side would just be what they're paying Tulsa, and then the rest of that they can use to help cover any sewer costs they have. Rural Water 4 comes in at $95.06, and they have a 6 to 10 million gallon water treatment plant, and offset their usage by purchasing water from Tulsa and Broken Arrow. One key thing with them is they are not required to provide fire flow with them being a rural water district, and so their system doesn't have to do that, which ours is required to. And then they're currently under construction on a wastewater plant. And then City of Coweta, their drinking water plant, so their total comes in at $96.27. Their drinking water plant was constructed at the same time as ours. They've had some trouble recently providing sufficient water and are in the process of kind of looking for some supplemental connections while they get that figured out. And currently they just have a lagoon system for wastewater, so they don't have the operations of a mechanical plant.
If I may jump in here real
Yeah.
quick. So if you look at the water, Emily's done a great job of laying this out. If you look at the water across the board with these entities, Bixby, Jinx, Owasso do not have a water treatment facility. They don't have a plant. They don't have to operate it. They don't have to man it. They don't have the equipment. They don't have the chemical cost. They have a distribution system. They still have to have storage tanks, elevated, whether ground storage. They still have to have that for the fire suppression, but they do not have the treatment cost, which is really one of your biggest costs on water. But their cost per water is the same as ours or higher. So they're offsetting their sewer. Their sewer is lower. So they're offsetting it like most people do without a rate study. I understand that. Rural Water District, Emily talked huge about they don't have to do fire suppression. So they don't have to have excess capacity to send to the community or their customers, and they don't have to have the big storage facilities. So they don't have as big a plant as you would need for fire suppression. So I just thought that was interesting to see this. And the cost of the sewer for most of those are a little bit lower. Most of those, Jinx has been around a while, and also with a mechanical plant. But she talked about Bixby's. Bixby was on a lagoon system until I don't know, about 8, 10 years ago, and just went to mechanical plant. The cost is in the mechanical plants. So I thought this was a good comparison, even though we're a little bit higher than the rest. Coweta is still on a lagoon system. So a lagoon is just what it sounds like. It's a big lagoon. It just sits there, and that's the process of treatment. They don't have all the big mechanical components. They don't even have to man it. They just have to come out and check it. So you're going to compare across the board, it's somewhat difficult if you don't have all the background information. So thanks for letting me interrupt.
Yeah,
Can I ask a question?
Yes,
If
sir.
these cities that buy water from, say Tulsa in this case, there's a cost to that? They pay Tulsa for that water?
Yes, there is.
Is that added into the cost that's
Yes,
shown
it
there?
is. So right now, if you have a master meter with Tulsa, I believe your cost is either $3.50 or $4 per 1,000 gallons. So then you take that cost that you're paying, and then you put your cost on top of it to send it to the customer to maintain your system.
Okay, so that cost is.
It is
shown in
included, yes, sir.
there. Okay.
I have,
I'm sorry.
nope, you're right ahead, Lisa.
I think what I feel that's, sorry. I think I feel, my question is, what I think would be important for our citizens to know is, so the cities that buy their water from somewhere else, which their water, they charge more than what we do, but if Tulsa decided to quit selling to them because they need it, then they have no water.
Okay, that's a great point.
Yeah.
So when you enter into a master meter agreement, and that's what Tulsa calls it, we have one, but ours is a little different because we have a plant. So if you are one of the other communities and you do not have a water treatment facility, there is a statement in that agreement that says if Tulsa has to go on mandatory or voluntary rationing, you do too. And if Tulsa's having a problem with pressures, they turn you off first. I would do that too. I'm going to make sure I serve my customers before I pass water on to another community. So Tulsa's plants are up north, so obviously Bigsby and Jinx are kind of to the south and to the west. They would cut them off first before they actually cut off their customers in Tulsa. That's just in their standard agreement. So it's a good point.
That's all I have.
Okay. My question was around the sewer part of it. So are the other cities listed here using more antiquated systems and Broken Arrow's ahead of the curve? Or what's, I need a little bit more of a deeper dive into the cost differences.
Probably similar. I know Owasa's using a very similar system that we do, oxidation ditch. It's been a long time since I've been in Jinx's. And Bigsby's is a little bit newer. They're probably using something similar. They probably, just like Broken Arrow in the 1980s, we're comparing Broken Arrow today, and I mean this with no disrespect, we're comparing to communities like we were in 1980.
That's what I was
35,000,
wondering,
40,000, and we didn't cover our cost of sewer. The cost to run utility systems, everybody looks to water. Well, we see that one, we know that one, that's it, so important, but the cost is in the sewer. The lift stations, it eats up your system, it eats up your pipe, it wears out the equipment. Honestly, what was ours? Charlie said it, April of 2017, we did our study. We are not 40,000 people at that point in time. We're way over 100,000 going, we've got to fix our sewer cost. That's why you see ours changing over the last almost decade, not quite. Prior to that, we would have been the same way.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
We have one more group of comparisons that we made. So we looked at water suppliers kind of in our region, but outside of Oklahoma, but that were kind of comparable cities to us. And so Allen, Texas, Frisco, Texas, and McKinney, Texas, all three buy water from or are part of the North Texas Municipal Water District. And so like Kenny talked about, when you purchase water from that, you don't have the cost to operate and manage your own plant. And then Bentonville also purchases water from Beaver Water District, which again, they don't have a plant to manage. And then Beaver Lake, where Beaver Water District gets water from, has very low organics. We got the chance to visit their water plant a couple of years ago, and it was the cleanest water I'd seen. I wanted to just drink it straight from the intake because it looked good enough to
You
drink.
can see
from
the
there.
bottom of the lake.
Yeah.
It's that clear. It's our Lake Tahoe over here.
Yes.
So I think she brings up a really good point here. Back in time with Broken Arrow, it's called a purchased water system. So January 1st, 1982, we started purchasing water from UWA until we got off in April of 2014. That's what Allen is. That's what Frisco is. That's what McKinney is. And Bentonville, actually everybody there, Bentonville, Springdale, Rogers, Lowell, and Fayetteville, all purchased from Beaver Water District. So they're all purchased water systems. Again, what that means is they don't have their own plant. Broken Arrow built a plant in 2014, which allows us much more flexibility. It allows us, for the first time, we actually have more, if you will, a second source and some protection. We were completely reliant upon UWA. We're not anymore. So I thought this was a great comparison, even though we have our own plant. These cities we compare with, obviously Frisco, McKinney are larger than us. Allen is real close to our size. I think they're just a little smaller than us. And then Bentonville's quite a bit smaller, but you can see that we compare across the board very well.
And then I'll pass this back to Charlie.
Yeah, I'll finish this up with just kind of the big things to kind of keep in mind of what we're trying to do here. You know, the biggest is we look at this on an annual basis. This isn't a one-year deal. This is a revolving thing. We're always looking at this. We're always working on it. And, you know, the ultimate goal for the city, at least the past goal and what we've been working to achieve for the decade that Kenny talks about, has been to try to make utilities stand independently. When you look at the charts that Emily just showed, you know, when looking at our neighboring communities, our sanitary looks super high compared to theirs, but they're doing what we've talked about, where they're subsidizing their system with their water bill. But you looked at the next chart and you compare us to the communities in Texas and Arkansas and everybody else that are our size or bigger. You know, they've moved to that more professional approach, and all of their sanitary sewer bills were higher than ours because they're getting to that point where they are running their utilities at the cost of what they're charging their customers. We're not there yet, but we're getting closer, and that's been our goal, is to get to that point where each utility is running independently on its own. And then it's really simple math at the end of the day for what we do. We're projecting our costs, and we're trying to make our revenue match our costs. And it's just, that's the simplicity of what we're trying to do all the time. And then, you know, there's different ways you could look at a utility bill and the services you provide. You could get into the details and say, do you really need this, this, and this? But I think the important thing to take away is, you know, under our leadership, under this council, and from what our citizens expect, we provide a high quality of service. And that high quality service that we want in our community, it has a cost that goes with it. And so, you know, this is the cost that we project to get to the quality of service that our citizens expect. And so.
And if I could add the last thing, we've discussed it, it's in there, we just haven't pulled it out and put it on record for the public in this meeting. We have a policy that the governing body has established that we need enough cash on hand in our reserves for each of the utilities. If a natural disaster or any type of disaster should hit, God forbid, hit our community, we've got to be able to continue to provide service immediately, as opposed to wait for FEMA, if they're going to be here or not going to be here, to show up and save the day. FEMA's a reimbursement. It takes a long time. Our neighbors to the north and east, Claremore, went through this about a year ago with a tornado. And had they not had enough cash on hand, talking to their city manager recently, he indicated we'd have been, you know, dead in the water, no pun intended. They needed to make sure they have reserves on hand. Going through this whole process, we're getting very close and exceeding in some places the policy that has been established. So.
All right. Any questions?
We'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. I think we sent something else in the packet. We also sent a comparison that you should have, so if you want to talk about that, we can pull it up and talk about that as well. So can you pull that comparison up? See if we have that. I do want to bring that up. That's not the right one. So we looked at what, yeah, there we go. We looked at what could we do to try to help balance out some things, and we can certainly talk about this, but just kind of giving you a high overview of it. The gray columns are the FY25, so that was last year's. I think that's supposed to be green. The light green is the FY26. That's what's in the budget. And you'll see on that very top line where it says FY26, I'm trying to read that. That's a 5% water, 19% sewer, and 5% in the stormwater. So those little percentages across there is what's budgeted in each one of those three main utilities. Option 1, Option 2, and Option 3 were options that Mr. Spurgeon asked us to take a look at to see if we could make some adjustments, see what those looked at, what they would look like. And then we actually threw a fourth option out there. And just honestly, that fourth option, we played around with those rates just to try to keep the cost that's in the 2026 budget basically the same. The revenue proposed basically the same. So, like I said, we'll be happy to answer any questions, and we can talk about this if you want. We can talk about anything that you need answers to.
Excuse me. Well, if I may, I appreciate you guys taking the time to bring this to us again and to give us those options. I know that's one of the things I asked in our 221 meeting was, you know, what would it look like if we lower those percentages, because I know for some of us it may not be that big a deal to pay the proposed cost, but then for others it may be a huge deal for them to pay that. So I want to be able to look and discuss all options, what's going to be best for our citizens here when it comes to this. And I know we talked about, well, what would happen even if we didn't increase it. And the context of that conversation was, you know, there'd be some projects we couldn't do or different things of that nature. But one of the things I did want to ask, and you kind of touched on it just a moment ago, Mr. Swab, about our reserves. You know, we required to have X amount of reserves for natural disasters. But it's kind of the same thing with our families and with our homes when, you know, when the budget gets tight, when prices increase, we have to tighten up the belt, or we have to look at moving money from our savings to our main account so that we can do the things that we need to do. I don't know what that option looks like for us as a city, so I don't think we talk about it that much. You know, if we did one of these other options or didn't increase, you know, what are our options as far as reserves or unencumbered funds to help cover some of those things so we can continue to provide the high quality service that the citizens are used to here in Broken Arrow.
If you'll slide back to the left a little bit so I can kind of, there we go, thank you. So let me kind of explain this to everybody, and then we can try to dive into some of those, because you, Councilor Green, that's exactly correct. So in the FY 2025 budget, the gray area, what we did here is we took the total number of water customers that we have, the total number of sewer customers, they're not the same, the total number of solid waste, and we actually had stormwater customers, but if you'll remember, stormwater is done by ESUs, equivalent service unit. So we know what that number is, and we ran those out in the gray area for each one of those line items. If you look down at the very bottom of the gray, on the bill that we're looking at, I think it was 7,300 gallons for water and 4,500 or 45, what is it? 4450. I thought, don't want to miscount that number. So you run that out for all of the customers in the city of Broken Arrow, we would generate almost $73 million in the budget. That's that bottom right-hand gray area, and the average bill for that 7,300 that you see over there and the 4,450 over there totals up to 140, just over $140 a month. Moving over to the green, doing the exact same thing, no numbers increase on customers, it comes out to 80 million. So it is about a $7 million increase, which is just under 10% overall. The individuals may be a little higher, but the total bill is right under 10%. And I'm going to ask Tom Cook a quick question. Can you come up and address one thing for me? And I know you have it in the top of your head. I don't remember it right off. Can you address the policy on our reserves for me?
So the current policy that we have is 90 days of expenditures on hand. That's the current policy that, if you think back to your budget book, it's one of the supplemental information pages in the front of the budget, but it's 90 days of expenditures cash on hand.
Thank you. Okay, I was thinking it was 90, but I knew you'd know right off. Finance. So to your point, we have to cover that and make sure that we're meeting that policy for that disaster. And we are hitting those. We're right at it. You have to take a look at your debt service every time it drops off. And when you take more debt, are you still at your policy? So we had to project over 5 years.
Let me interject.
Yes, sir.
If I can, for the governing body. So we're still trying to reconcile the end of the year, but that amount is at least $20 million, probably a little bit more. But obviously with finance closing out the previous fiscal year, that's where we're at. I thought we were closer to 22, but we're somewhere, I would say, at least 20 to 22 million.
So that'd make sense on an $80 million budget, a fourth of that. So yeah, we're hitting right where we should be. All right. So as you see, the other budgets, and we can look at them kind of real quick, they're all hitting somewhere around 80 million. So that the proposed FY 2026, the green, would be going through that whole thing again, would equate to just over 80 million in the city of Broken Arrow, Alabama. And the average bill is just under 155. So like I said, just right around a 10% increase. So the other options that we looked at, Councilor Green did say, hey, can we look at changing some of this? And we ran option one, we ran 5% on the water, and it looks like it's 15.5% on sanitary sewer, and then 5% on stormwater with a $1.75 bill, add to the, is that the sewer? Base. To the base? Is that to both or just to the sewer? Yeah, I think we added $1.75 to just the sewer. Well, I guess you can look it up there. Yes, just the sewer. So when you run through that scenario, option one, you're not quite at 80 million. You're just under. The bill still 153 compared to 155, so you save a couple dollars a month. And you're $1 million short. So that other one, the bottom line that you see right there, we're comparing, as Charlie said, we're just over $1 million short. Well, what's that comparing to? The 2026 budget. We wanted to see how close we were hitting the budget. So running option one, we come up about $1 million short from where we were budgeted. So to your point, Councilor Green, if we chose option one, we would cut out $1 million worth of projects or services or whatever that case may be. That's what we'd have to do. Sliding over to option two.
And Kenny, just real quick on that.
Yes, ma'am.
When you say cut out the projects, that list that we showed where these funds go to, that's neighborhood improvements. That's things that would delay.
Yes.
$1 million worth of projects that would be delayed in getting and postponed. Blah, can't
Well, no,
find my words.
you called, you nailed it. It's called delayed services.
Deferred.
Deferred maintenance. If you defer the maintenance or you delay the project, it all ties together.
Yeah.
So what happens if we delay it? Well, you saw what's happened to the cost. It's gone up. So if we delayed $1 million,
It could be million and a half.
Could it be 1.1 or 1.2 million when we get back to it? It most likely would be. Just depends on how quickly you can get back to it. So, excellent point. Option 2, we upped the water a little bit to 6.75, kept the sanitary sewer at 15.5, and it looks like the storm water is that 5%? And then we created the base, added the base to the sewer at $2 instead, added another quarter to see what that does. It kept the bill at $153 on average and still just under 80 million, but we only gained from option 1 just a little bit. I may be jumping around. I'm sorry. Should be reading option 2. So option 2 got us closer. We're only 335,000 off of the balance, so it's getting closer. Then option 3 was just under $1 million. So if you look at option 1, 2, and 3, we're playing with the water, we're playing with the sewer, we're playing with the base rate to try to get to something a little more pleasing and a better appetite, but we're hanging around somewhere between $350,000 and $1 million less than the budget. So it goes right back to what we said, we would have to cut services or cut projects and potentially defer the maintenance.
So my understanding, we don't have reserves that would be able to cover that shortfall to make up for that if we had to?
Well, as Mr. Spurgeon said, right now we have maybe 20 million in reserve. So if you did that, we would drop down to 19 million, so we wouldn't have the 90 days on hand. That's just a policy decision.
Here's the thing I wanted to share with the authority about the fund balance. You know, there are some challenges when you're a community that it does financially, okay? Everybody assumes that you can afford everything. Yes, right now, if council said we want to use $2 million out of fund balance, we could do that. We have let's say $22 million. The challenge becomes next year because in order to basically continue, you have to use that additional money out of your fund balance because that was a revenue that you used. So at some point you get in the cycle where you start drawing down of it to where eventually you can run out. Then the question becomes, do you adjust the policy or do you say, okay, we're going to start trying to build because that's one of the things that I did when I first got here, because we weren't anywhere near 90 days. We had to start taking money left over from the budgets and put it over here for the unencumbered to meet that policy. So, I mean, there's certainly could use some of the funds. It just perpetually it becomes has a detrimental effect on the funds we need for those extraordinary unexpected circumstances.
Yeah. I just want to make it plain, you know,
Oh,
for
good
everybody to
question.
understand.
Yeah.
If everybody go back and watch this meeting.
Yeah.
No, I'm glad you brought it up, Counselor, because, you know, we financially, the city works very hard to manage the money we have, and some people don't, and some of our own employees don't understand. They see fund balances and they think, yeah, we can do this. When the reality is that it's a responsibility of my office and the council to not look at just 1 year. You've got to look at the organization perpetually, and how do you continue to pay for those services over a long period of time. And I knew that you were asking to make sure everything was out there, and I appreciate that, because I was going to bring up the fund balance if it hadn't brought up, because that certainly is an option, but there's consequences to that. And I just want the public to know, as you do, is that we have that a case, and there's an extraordinary unexpected circumstance. I mean, for example, if there was a major problem with we've had to use our fund balance a couple of times for the sewer line on County Line Road. When it blew out, the money to fix that had to come from somewhere. So we either deferred something or we took money out of savings for $500,000 approximately worth of expenses. And those are the kind of things that you try to make sure you have funds available to do. I mean, could we delay some of if council says, we'd like to see you don't delay any projects, but are there any pieces of equipment that could make it another year? I mean, there's a few things that we could certainly do, but we're not talking large dollar amounts that would change the overall request significantly.
And to your point too, I've said often that I remember back a long time ago whenever there was no sewer capacity. So all plats had marked on
Yes.
it, you can build a house, but you can't tie onto a sewer. And you can't put a septic tank in at that time in the city of Broken Arrow. So you just had a house that was going to be sitting there. Because we got ourselves into a bind because we was using the water to fund everything, and finally that caught up with us. I will say that Kenny made a comment, or somebody made a comment a while ago about our lift stations. I think that one thing, and it won't affect this year at all, I wouldn't see, but they are extremely expensive.
Yes.
And that point was made. Not only that, they're getting worse. They have to completely be replaced, you know what I mean? Sewer is really hard on that equipment, that
Yeah.
machinery, as somebody said. So I think that one of our views as we think about this is we've already voted the potential of building a new sewer plant out east. So when that happens, that's going to help a lot with that cost. Now, that plant's going to be expensive, but the cost of these lift stations will be negated. If that doesn't happen in the near future, then it's just going to keep snowballing. And I don't know, we have 17, 18 lift stations out in that area.
Oh, and I think that's about the right number, 17, 18, in
In that-
that basin, yeah.
Yeah.
30-something overall.
I think around 31 overall in our system.
So, and that was one thing we was opposed to start with, but they had to come in, but they had to make it work. So I think that our thoughts as we think about how this is, and the 10% is pretty high for some people, I would think. But to have a quality system, not only sewer, but water and all of that, to keep our city quality-wise, that we're going to have to do those projects that are listed, and those listed, we have to have the money for those projects. So I think that's what the budget is talking about,
It
is we have to, don't really have a lot of choice, because we don't want to start going into the reserve fund, and we need to start looking at the long term, the funding source to build that sewer plant in the future and get rid of some of those lift stations.
So I'll give a real-world example that happened here in Broken Arrow. Most of you will remember the ice storm in December of 2007. Emily won't, but the rest of us will. December of 2007, an ice storm. Well, that didn't interrupt our utilities and our service, but the debris, the trees that were in the creeks, the waterway, i.e. Bama, got brought out. Solid waste recycling, streets and stormwater had to help. We made a couple of passes through the city to pick up all of that. We took it to Nean House, we took it to Indian Springs, and we took the debris, I believe, over by NSU, and had different places where we had to drop that debris off. Cost us over $3 million to do that. We put it in for FEMA, and Tom will know the exact date, but I think it took over a year to get our money back. We used our reserves, we used everything we could to just pick up tree limbs. That's a real world problem that's happened. So that was I started in January of 2008, right after that happened. So that was kind of an eye-opener for me on how a city has to manage that type of disaster. It had nothing to do with our utility, but we had to address it.
And I think that's part of the thing too that people don't understand is that the cost is not just the water or the sewer, it's the personnel, it's maintenance, it's upkeep, and it's new equipment. It's everything it takes to actually make our utilities run and our city run. And I don't think people which I don't know that I fully understood that, right? Whenever I was looking at my first utility bills and saying, oh, you know,
The fuel
I
for
don't use
the
that much
equipment.
water, you know what I mean?
Right.
Yeah.
And we call it water bill, and I'm even guilty of
Utility
it.
bill.
I'm even guilty of it, and that's
Yeah.
not, that's furthest from the truth now.
Staff has to put $1 in a jar anytime we call it the water bill. Mr. Spurgeon implemented that, so it is a utility bill.
I got the idea from Jerry
Did he
Schuber.
put $1 in though? Because I've heard it out of his mouth too.
That, we have that tracking as revenue for it.
So let me just share two things if I can, Madam Chairs. One thing that I want you to know is that, and I want to follow up on the Vice Mayor's comment, is that we're trying to manage, we've got $13 million worth of debt, and if you look at there's going to be $100 million for a new plant and lift stations. Last year, council approved a long-range plan. Part of that is analyzing when debt's rolling off and mainly when the the water plant rolls off, to be able to not to where you've got some capacity to absorb that debt without being a huge increase. Because if you're going to put that kind of money over 4 or 5 years, the increases are going to be significant in probably the mid to late 30s, early 40s in that time frame. And secondly is that we've had one of the wettest seasons since I've been here, which you know what that means? Water revenues are down. And obviously that's got to be monitored, and we may have to make adjustments in the budget just on the fact that the revenue projections have not come in. And so that's why Cindy and Tom and all the directors in Bama watch their expenses very closely, because, you know, we'll know by, I would say, I doubt if we're just going to have this 100 straight days or 40 straight days of 100-degree weather, and that's going to make up for it. And so we're probably going to have a downturn, which means we'll have to make adjustments in our expenses, but we'll usually do to see how those can things come in less, things you don't have to purchase that you determine throughout the year. So we're always looking at exactly where we need to be and if we need to make adjustments.
So to your point, I think that was a great segue into my bill. I've marked out my address and some of the other key information. Sorry to my wife for showing her bill publicly, but anyhow, this is my current bill. It's 26 days. I highlighted that over on the left. My water is only 4,900 gallons. At this point in time, this is May, so the first 26 days in May, basically, 3.5 people in the home. My son was in college. He came back during the middle of the bill, so then we went up to 4, so we started with 3. So roughly 3.5 people. 4,900 because May was wet. Mm-hmm. It's not big. So my bill's $116 overall. All the charges. I don't know if you can slide down to the next one. What would that look like if we used what's in the 2026 budget? So I put my bill on the gray side. There's your $116.20. Had we had what's in the budget, if it was this year and I had $4,900 again, it would come out $128.04. So $11.84 more. I compare everything to my addictions. My $3 Coke Zero. That's thank you, sir. One less a week, so 4 times 3 is $12. I'm not going to give up my Coke Zero. I'm going to go ahead and pay that $12. That's me personally. Someone else may have to. That's kind of a real world of how you look at that. It would be $3 a week times 4 weeks. Now at $12, I would have been able to pay my bill for one less Coke Zero. So, and I'm not giving it up, but that's personal.
I think that's definitely an interesting, perspective. I'm like you though. I would not give up my Coke Zero. However, one of the things I continue to think about going back to the slide was the double-digit increases that we continue to incur. And that's just the economy, that's inflation, that's all that. And that's just an unfortunate piece of it, and that, I always kind of say everything's going up but my paycheck,
Yeah.
And so we do take it very seriously here on the council because we know how it can impact people. But I think, keeping in mind the backside of it where it is a double-digit increase almost on every single thing, that it's more of it's a pass-through. It's not like we're trying to just get more and more wheelbarrows of money and, go put it somewhere. It is more of just the pass-through, continuing to maintain our high level that we have in Broken Arrow, and I hope people understand that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. No further questions or discussion? I think that. How about remarks from governing body members?
Well, I guess I'll just say, when you break it down like to your specific bill, I mean, it's still $12, but $12 doesn't quite sound as bad as like when you look at all the numbers,
Right.
So if we do vote on this and decide to move forward to go with this percentage, I think it's important with our message, that we're responsible for our water. We don't have to rely on anybody else, that it is $12 for an average bill and those types of things. Yep. We're not going to make everyone happy. We know that. But I think that education piece might be a little easier pill to swallow.
Well, this meeting alone with all the information, if people will go back and sit down and actually listen, it'll be real helpful.
Yeah.
to
Well, there
be
will be
educated.
for the authorities, as in the previous years, I will have a letter that will go into all the utility bills that the communications team will also post. And I've got this, we spent a lot of time, and I appreciate Emily and engineering and Tim Robbins, and you got Kurt Pools here today, finance. A lot of hands were on this, trying to provide good information to do exactly what Councilor Green was doing, is get all the information out there, which is, that's the MO of the council administration, is transparency, okay? So in that letter, I mean, I've got some ideas, and obviously because it's half of the council, I'll send it out to you for a draft, because I think there's a document or two that actually might be able to go in there that to show, because the one thing I always see is we're always the highest. Well, that's not necessarily the case, and there's been some things that have been said that we can come up with a letter for those that take the time to read it, to understand the costs and what are some of those challenges. Because when you just look at it on its face value, it's like, well, here we go again. And unfortunately, it seems that there is some folks, I'm always trying to get people to understand the value they get for that service, and understand that, this is what's needed to maintain that service. And so I'll have a draft, and I'll share it with the authority, and anybody has any comments, they can certainly make sure, because I want to provide something that will hit the mark in terms of, I don't like it, but I understand it.
Yeah.
And that's always my goal, is at least we got the information. It's hard to argue with, as Councilor Picker said. So we'll bring this back either the first. I'll talk to Cindy and decide the 1st or 2nd in August, and then that letter will be going out probably in September, like it normally does. September, October, but probably September.
Okay. City Manager, you have any other remarks?
I just appreciate your time for the extra meeting, and I'm looking forward to. Cindy, do you have?
Yeah, I just want to remind everybody too, the new rates are not going effect until water bill is in October.
Okay.
Yeah. So we'll have it out before then.
Okay.
Thank you, Cindy.
All right. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
That would be $1 for Cindy.
Pay for yourself.
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call.
It's not showing.
Lisa.
Sorry, we
I
gotta
made the
get out of-
motion. Oh,
Click it,
sorry.
Yeah, I clicked it. You click it. Click it.
Got it.
Yeah, we were still in the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, you should be able to vote now.
Now we got
Try again.
All right.
It's,
Is it?
mine doesn't show to vote.
Mine shows I voted.
Yeah.
I vote yes to adjourn.
Okay, we got it. We're adjourned. Thank you.